This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so we also have Lohita here joined with us. So I'll share my screen. Okay, are you all able to see my screen? Can I get a quick confirmation?
Yep.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes, sir.
And and also, if you can just confirm if you can hear the audio. 1 second. Are you able
Yes,
to
sir.
hear the audio?
Is a dual purpose.
Were you able to hear the audio?
Yes,
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 sir.
we
Yes,
were.
we were able
Okay,
to.
wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. All right. So let's begin. So one one promise that I need from everybody is that let's keep it a lot interactive. Use the chat window if you want to interrupt me and ask anything. Please do so. All right. So let's begin here. So it's a very usual scenario. Picture this: that maybe each one of us have prepared very well. We followed all the basic rules of a good presentation. We spoke clearly and kept within the allotted time. And yet, something was missing somewhere. And the fact that something was missing was even clearer as the members of the judges they struggle to find any significance in the completed or the proposed work. But the employee had been thinking, hey, I've done well and I've made useful contributions here. I made a great presentations that's full of plots and tables showing the effectiveness of my approach. And that was all included in the presentation. And what he was expecting the presenter was to get some congratulatory pat on the backs, but what he got was sheer skepticism and doubt. Now, the employee fell victim to a very common problem in our presentations that we do, that he forgot the story that has made his proposal really exciting. And in his desire to impress the presentation, in his desire to impress the judges, he turned the presentation into a series of plots, diagrams, equations, facts, and a lot more numbers that left the audience nearly comatose. Now, that's something missing, is what we call storytelling. Now, throughout the ages, people have taught their children you and others using stories. I'm sure all of us, we love stories. When we were kids, our parents used to tell us stories, or our grandparents used to tell us stories. And even today, you're in a presentation, right? You might fall asleep, but if somebody's telling you a story in a presentation, you'd be wide awake. That's how the brain is, because you're simply equipped to understand and retain the narrative and information in context than to retain bare facts. Now, to this, I'm sure you all are certainly thinking that, hey, all of that is good, Pankaj, but I only have 20 minutes to present. And how can I fit in a plot or a character just like a movie, right? A development and a battle of good versus evil, and still have time to get to my results? Well, let me assure you, all of that is possible. A good story must have a plot, it has to have characters, and obviously a dramatic appeal. And this also goes for stories in a business world. Let's draw some parallels, okay? Instead of villains that we have in movies, while working, we have our own problems. To set up the drama, we can relate the failed attempts to solve the problem or the potential benefit from being the first one to find the solution. And all of that is key in the sales world as well. And for the plot, we have so much data and solutions that we present to take care of the suspense. Let me prove all of this through one of the best sales pitches that I have come across in my life. It's only one part of the 4-part series, but I'm sure it will get you thinking. And after we watch the video, I would like to hear from all of you as to what were your takeaways. All right, so let me play this video now. And listen to this very carefully, and we'll then share.
Header, can we see it?
Now you can see your.
All right. So now I would like to hear from all of you as to what are your takeaways from this particular video that you just watched. I'll just stop sharing for a moment and like to hear from all of you. What are
I
your
guess
takeaways? Yep.
I would like to speak on this.
Mhm.
So I guess the stories can help you out to make people who are not ready to buy your stuff, but they can buy your stuffs. So in a way, it is good for advertisement, and it's make people interested in your stuff basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wonderful. Good
The
point.
way
Thank you
he
so
was
much for that.
and the way he was telling people stuff, it was really eye catching. Even I feel like, yeah, I wanted to buy that thing.
Very well said, Yash. Beautiful. How about others? Abhijit, Hari Krishna, Siraj, Lohita, anybody? Naveen as well.
Hey,
Hello, sir.
Pankaj,
Since
I'll be in spectator mode. Okay, let the
All
team
right.
speak. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Yes, Abhijit, go on.
sir, what I was thinking is the person was first using the thing as a simple thing, but later on, when things went on, the same thing was used as multiple things. So it attracted the audience towards the thing, and different approaches were seen. So it
Okay.
is like making the same thing more interesting.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yes. What else? Anybody else would like to pitch in?
Yeah, actually, I think the product was not that great, but the way he included his brother and everything, it added something that makes the product more appealing. I think he
Wonderful.
covered the thing that the product has no utility by adding some story to it.
Yeah, beautiful. Very well. So we have two Yashes here. Okay. So that's Yash Chidawar. Okay. Okay, let's talk about, let's do a little bit of an operation of this video. Okay. And this applies to all of us when we are telling stories. And stories is not only about telling stories to your kids or listening from somebody else. It's about in a business world, hardcore business. Look at the energy with which he walked inside the room, right? The confidence, the energy, the enthusiasm, it was seen in his body language. And then he looks directly at what the customer wants to think about. And if you look at in the entire video, this is storytelling at its supreme best, where a personal experience of just going on a walk with a son to a park that is beautifully narrated to a business product pitch, where he talks about the context, then there is surroundings, cold December morning, wanted to go to a park, and then there's characters here, he himself, his son, and then the sequence of events when he says, well, after 30 minutes of chasing this guy, the sun comes out. And then obviously, any just like any story, there is a catch, there is a twist. So it was a cloudy day, and suddenly the sun comes out. Now there's where the challenge is. So from a cold, cloudy morning to a sunny day, and he's sweating, right? And look at the style of narration today, right? The way he narrated the entire story to the judges. Well, in 1 or 2 hours, right, everybody, you can learn the science of storytelling, right? But to develop this as an art, you really need to work on your narrative. You might have the best of the slides, the best of the animations, the best of the content, but if you do not speak well, it's not obviously about articulation, but are you connected to your story? Simple terms, if you don't show up, you don't show up at all. Let me give you a small example, okay? So right now I was talking about this entire video, right? Now if I talk in this monotone, if you look, there was such good energy. Looks look where he wanted to directly want the customer to be thinking about. Storytelling was it as it at its best, where a personal experience is beautifully married to a business product pitch and all of that. Now tell me, if I talk in this monotone language, I'm sure all of you are going to curse Naveen saying that, hey, where did you get us into a meeting, that too on a Sunday evening? You spoiled our evening, right? How many of you agree to that?
I will.
You're right? So obviously you're not going to even stay for maybe the next 1 hour. So is the power of your words, is the power of your content matching the power of your voice? That's very important in storytelling. And then look at how the audience was involved, all the judges were involved right throughout. They were smiling, they were laughing, they were sharing the moment with him because he created that air with his energy. And then, like just like any other story, there was a problem. And the problem was when the hoodie went off and dropped onto the wet grass. And look how the judges also, they shared that emotion with him when he said, no way, there's got to be a better option, right? And suddenly he looks at that opportunity, and suddenly he says, he retorts by saying, that was when QuickClip was born. So every problem or adversity makes way for opportunities. And then look how he compared the dearth of options to suddenly having so many options. And that is selling at your best. Now, coming to a very important element in this video, humor, right? When he very sarcastically said, with a proprietary conversion technique, we were able to convert into a bag. Now, the lesson from this video is that not all of us are blessed with this unique skill of having a timing of a humor. However, if you have that, please never shy away from using it, because it goes a long, long way, right? And then if you look at the entire video again, he's so seamlessly switching between humor and getting to the point, and the judges also are switching accordingly. An innovative narrative, as Yash rightly said, an innovative narrative for such a simple yet innovative product. And then he did that flip with his brother, a working demo, right? When you're telling a story, right, it just cannot be about talking. There has to be some demos about your product, some working models of your product. It's all has to show that what have you got to offer. And right at the end, after creating all the hype and curiosity, right, he declares what he needs. What is the outcome that he wants from the narrative of the story? And this is where a business story is different to a very normal story, which is a business story should always have an action on the part of the audience. It could be the judges, it could be your clients, it could be your customers, and they have to take a quantifiable action. And finally, he goes by saying, flip your investments into black belt profits. So how well he translates his product of the vision to the vision of the customer, which is nothing but profit, right? So story, as I say, it can get you a physical reaction. It can, for example, you can say your heart raced or your eyes dilated when you have a little tears in your eyes. You could talk about saying, hey, I got a chill down by my spine, or you can say, hey, I can feel it in my stomach. So we physically react when someone is telling a story, right? And the moment the presentation is done, you get that flat line which you see on a monitor when somebody passes away. That's as simple as that. So when you are narrating your story to the world, right, at the beginning, you need to establish what is. So the biggest tricks that I would give you when you tell a story to your customers or clients or to anybody else, always say, well, the present is kind of okay-ish, it's not very great. And suddenly, then you tell, but hey, look at the future here. Look at the future here, right? That's how beautiful the future is going to look like. And what you have to do throughout your narrative and the presentation is increase this gap between what is and what could be as big as possible. And keep switching from what is to what could be, what is to what could be. Because you're trying to make the present unappealing. And you want to draw the audience or the judges or the client or the customer towards what could be in the future if your idea is adopted, if your solution is implemented, if your product is bought. And then lastly, you have to have a call to action. And you need to describe the world as a new bliss. This is you totally transformed. This is the way the world is going to look like when we join together, we join our hands together by working on my idea to solve a problem. So what you need to do is you need to end in a very poetic way and a dramatic way. Cutting the story short, effective storytelling is a fine and a beautiful art. And if you do so, if you can create it as a skill, something interesting is going to happen. Now, where are stories were ruling? Every big organization you talk about these days, Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, Apple, NASA, Google, everywhere, gone are the days when people will ask you for your resume and go through those rhetorical questions one by one, just like a normal interview. It's not happening anymore in the market. People they'll give you some situations and they will try to explore stories from your life, and the stories that you tell will tell a lot about you and your personality and your misery and your achievements and whatnot. It would be a clear mirror right in front of them. Why? Because our brains are wired to understand and retain stories. Nothing else. So what's the point here then? The point here is simple, that the highest paid person of the 21st century is going to be the storyteller, and I'm not kidding at all. And I'm not kidding at all. And all of this holds very true in a business world, where an organization's stories and the stories its leaders tell you, it helps solidify relationships in a way that factual statements encapsulated in bullet points or numbers absolutely don't. I'll ask you a small question. And what I would want all of you is, before I go there, I'm going to again stop sharing. Let's have everybody unmuted right now. Everybody unmuted. Okay. Now, why is it so tough to remember facts? I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Who invented the theory of gravitation?
Newton.
Okay, yes. So in a few seconds, you get the answer. Newton. Using what was the theory proved?
Like in what ways the theory was proven?
Right. So using what was this theory proven?
Yeah, so he was sitting under a tree and the apple fell off right beside him.
Apple.
Yeah.
Absolutely yes. When did you hear this story?
In
When I
this,
was in, I guess,
Sixth standard.
sixth, seventh standard, I was in.
Exactly. Maybe when we were very small, right?
Yes,
Now, last question. In which year was the theory of gravitation proven?
not sure.
early
Simple.
1800s.
Early 1800s. But are we sure about the answer?
No.
All right.
No.
But were you sure about Newton and Apple?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because if you look at this, if you want, we can go. And I'll ask you one more question. What was the moral of the story, The Hare and the Tortoise?
Slow and steady wins the race.
Absolutely yes. Now all of you can go on mute because there's a lot of background noise. So what I'm trying to prove here is, now these are pieces of information, and talk about theory of gravitation. These are not ordinary facts. These are pieces of information that we have read, memorized, reread, revised, and yet today we struggle to remember what we learned. Simply put, facts are difficult to remember, right? Now, talking about the moral of the story, the hare and the tortoise, right? So why do we even remember an obscure piece of information about two animals in the forest? Something that you did not read multiple times, you did not revise multiple times, you did not memorize multiple times. So again, harping the same point, that is the power of stories, because once any story, any context, or any subject is told to you in a story format, you always remember the story and the storyteller. If I plant an idea in your mind, think about the last video. However, you do not take any action after that. So I'm trying to plant an idea today during this session that, hey, listen, guys, storytelling is a beautiful art. But if you do not take any action after today, maybe I do not do a job well. I do not tell a story well at all to you, right? So that's the power of stories, and that's the impact that it creates. Moving on. So this was about Newton, by the way. Now, how much time, if I have to ask all of you, how much time do you think you need to tell me your life story? How much time would you need?
Probably 2 to 3 minutes.
2 to 3 minutes. Okay, great. How about others? How much time do you think you need to tell me your story, your life story so
Two
far?
5 minutes.
minutes.
I'm sorry.
2 to 3 minutes.
2 to 3 minutes. Somebody said 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And it always happens, right, when you tell a story to someone about your life, and when you come back and sit down in your seat, this feeling comes like, hey, oh my god, I could have told that as well. That was a much better aspect of my life. Happens, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
So what I
Yes. Subs.
I'm sorry, I just lost your voice.
Sir, what I was telling is when we are telling the story of our life, actually we must tell the things which the audience wants to listen to us, and that we must first decide, and according to that we should tell our story of the life, because they will only be able to relate what they have or might have also gone through. So
I love that. I love that. Yes. So it's the structure that you're talking about, right? And what's relevant to the audience. Beautiful. Beautiful. Very good answer. Let me show you. Let me show you a video. 1 second. Yeah. Let me show you all a video, and you'll see a beautiful story which was told. Okay. Again, are you able to hear the audio? Just to confirm.
yes, sir.
Okay. So let us play this video, and it is a mere 53 seconds. Imagine the power. And listen to this carefully.
Très très mignon. Alors?
Le commandant et toute son équipe espèrent que vous avez passé un agréable.
Your thoughts, guys. So what do you think? In a mere 53 seconds, an entire story of a lifetime was told when a guy probably wants to impress a French girl. He starts by looking at the various cafes in Paris, and then they get into a relationship, and then it's long distance. So the guy flies to Paris, finds a job over there, gets married to the girl, and finally they become parents, and he's looking at how to assemble a crib. Another way of storytelling. You don't even have to speak a word, and you just do it through videos. What are your takeaways, your best takeaways from this video?
Visuals are important.
Very nice. Beautiful. I love that
Background,
point. Background, yes.
background music sounds.
Background music, absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. So what did we learn from this video is less is always more. The more we speak, right, there are chances that you might flounder. So can you respect the time of the audience? Because there is a study by Microsoft Canada which says the average human attention these days is a mere 8 seconds. Just 8 seconds people have an average human attention, right? I'm not saying that you do a story in 8 seconds, but do you have a compelling story to at least keep the audience engaged for 3 to 4 minutes? The moment it starts going beyond 4 minutes, right, people start losing interest. Okay, right. I'll just take a quick pause here. Am I doing okay so far? Is it all making sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as I was saying that business storytelling is about science. So if it is science, let's define it with the eyes of a person who is an ex-Hindustan Unilever, ex-XLRI and an ex-IIM graduate, Mr. Indraneet Chakraborty, who's got this kind of authority over business storytelling in India, and where he says this, a story, a story is a fact or an opinion wrapped in a context and delivered with emotions of characters in a story. How beautiful is that, right? Whenever you're telling a story, the moral of the story is the fact or the opinion. But to explain that, there is so much context, and then it is delivered with characters who have emotions. So that is what a business story is. You have to build stories where the facts and opinions will be wrapped around the context and then delivered with emotions of characters. Right. Now, coming to what's the treasure in a story? So any story, there has to be a treasure, and the treasure is it either is a measurable business outcome, or you're trying to change a root problem as well, right? So you normally say by saying, and I want to tell a story about so that I can. I want to tell a story about so that I can. So this is what you're beginning with the end in the mind, right? So this all this that happens, right, when you're listening to a story, telling a story, it all lights up. It all lights up very similar cells in the brain, which is very similar to when you're watching a movie or a bedtime story or you're with a loved one, right? Now, this is the concept that the one that you see in the blue font where it says, I want to tell you a story about so that I can. So you could use a business incident from the past so that you can influence somebody's hearts, mind, or the wallet. And that could be a prospective client as well. Or it could be a story about the future itself. Like I would like to tell you a story about my visualization of the future or my imagination about a prototype so that I can. And then the story continues. Now remember, this is only a concept, and I'll come to the statement in a while. So the next time you're presenting a story to anybody, I would like all of you to ask these questions to yourself prior to narration. Number one, what is that I want to achieve by narrating the story? What action I want to trigger within the audience? So that's an actionable item. And then the most important part is the story never ends when you stop telling the story. That story has to be lingering into the audience's mind. Let's say you're presenting to a client and client is living in a nearby hotel. So after your maybe meeting, the client is driving back to the hotel. During that drive, is the client still thinking about what you said? If you said, you've told a very compelling story, right? So I want, for example, I want to tell a story so that I can, and the examples could include, I want to tell a story of my last successful agile project so that I can convince the stakeholders to adopt agile methodology. Or I want to tell a story of the lesson that I learned from the last project that I was involved in so that I can convince my manager to hire more resources. So the end is the action, and the action is very important. It will vary from role to role, the situation that you're in. So all you need to do is begin with the end in the mind, right? That's very important. Moving on. Now this is a story. I'm sure this is the line that you all would have heard a zillion times during COVID. Wash your hands, right? But it's nothing to nothing to do with COVID. Imagine, and again, I would want a few honest answers. Let's say all of you are visiting a hospital, okay, and you're just going there as a one-off appointment, and you see this sign on the wall of the hospital which says, "Wash your hands." Let me take you back to the world when there was no corona at all. And considering you're part of that world, corona had never happened. You are visiting a hospital, and you see the sign on the wall. How many of you are going to wash your hands only by reading this message on the wall? Forget there was corona. I wouldn't have.
Actually, I
Tell
would have.
me,
I would have
you would have.
because usually when I come from hospital to home, I usually take bath. That's a normal principle in my home. My mom applied.
Wonderful. Okay, all right. But who was that, by the way?
Yes.
Yash. But Yash, tell me one thing.
Hmm.
You have a principle at your home. It's a culture in your home. But
Yeah.
you tell me,
Once
out
we
of
come to
10
hospital.
people, hmm, let's say out of 10 people, there was no
Hmm.
corona ever, and those
Yeah.
10 people have gone. Out of 10 people, how many would wash their hands?
I guess very less.
Just by watching this, very less, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
very less. I can say 2 or 3 people will wash.
Yeah, even that will be a
Maybe
very good
less.
number, by the way. Yeah.
Or maybe
So,
very less.
correct. Now, this is just a message in the form of a few words, which you find in so many places around. But does it have any impact? Absolutely no. Does it have
No.
any action?
No.
Absolutely no. However, if I now show you one video that is about the importance of washing a hand, and it actually had an impact on an entire generation of people, and I'll ask this question again. Let me play that video first, and then I'll take some inputs from all of you. 1 second.
Have you ever heard of Ignaz Semmelweis? He was a European doctor, an obstetrician in the mid-1800s. He worked at Vienna General Hospital, where he tried to get to the bottom of a horrendous mortality rate among women in the maternity ward. In the section of the ward where Semmelweis practiced, the mortality rate was 1 in 10. Vienna General had such a frightening reputation that some women actually gave birth on the street and then went to the hospital. Semmelweis gradually became obsessed with the problem. He looked at every variable he could think of that might explain such a high mortality rate, but could find no answer. Nothing he tried made any measurable difference. Gradually, his inquiry led him to think about the possible significance of research done by the doctors on cadavers in the basement of the hospital. Many of the doctors split their time between research on cadavers and treatment of live patients. They hadn't seen any problem with that practice because there was, as yet, no understanding of germs. Over time, Semmelweis developed a theory that became the precursor to what we know today as germ theory. He concluded that particles from cadavers and other diseased patients were being transmitted to healthy patients on the hands of the physicians. So he immediately instituted a policy requiring physicians to wash their hands thoroughly in a chlorine and lime solution before examining any patient. The death rate immediately fell to 1 in 100. Semmelweis once sadly remarked, "Only God knows the number of patients who went prematurely to their graves because of me." Imagine living with that. The doctors were doing the best they knew how, but they were carrying a disease they knew nothing about, what was later identified as a germ. There is a similar germ that is spreading in organizations, a germ we all carry to one extent or another, a germ that kills leadership effectiveness and teamwork, a germ that causes a multitude of people problems, a germ that can be isolated and neutralized. That germ is something called the box of self-deception.
All right. So now if I ask all of you the same question, again, there is no corona ever happened, but you've seen this video and you have seen that message on the wall which says wash the hands. Now, what are the chances that we will wash our hands?
90%.
90%. Why? Because now it is the same message which is in a combination of a video that has impacted your mind and also that message on the wall, right? So for all of you who could not get maybe the video, this is the person of a person called of a person called Ignaz Semmelweis, and it was a story about doctors who were not washing their hands after working on cadavers. Now, what are cadavers? Cadavers are dead bodies that doctors work on for experimental purposes. And in the same hospital, there was a maternity ward, and the same very doctors who were working on cadavers, they would go and help women during the birth time, during the labor. Unknowingly, they were carrying the germs from the dead bodies to the bodies of the women, and due to which the death rate was very, very high. And as a result of which, many women died during childbirth. And women were very then extremely scared to go to the hospital called the Vienna General Hospital. And as a result of this, the hospital had a very bad name. Because of a small negligence on the part of the doctors, it led to an absolute massacre. And that was when doctors realized that not washing a hand, a simple habit of not washing the hand was creating so much havoc. And just by washing the hands thereafter, it helped the death rate come down from 1 in 10 to 1 in 100. Why am I telling you this? Because if you are a visitor who's visiting this hospital and you see the sign wash your hands, you might not pay attention to it as much as the story that you watch. The story will change your entire perception, and it is also obviously very relevant to the times that we're living in. Moving on. Right. This we've done, this we've done, this we've done. Okay. Now, we are covering the next part of storytelling, which is a very important ingredient of storytelling. And I'll play a video about a landlord and a builder. And do let me know if that brings a smile to your face towards the fag end of the video, okay? So give me one moment. All right, so I'd like to take your takeaway. What do you think we learned from this particular video? And before that, did it bring a smile to your faces?
It shows the importance of analogies in a storytelling concept.
Absolutely superb. Well done, Yash. Somebody else, yes. We've not heard from Siraj. We've not heard from Hari Krishna.
Yes, sir. The thing is, I
Yeah,
was
the
able. Yeah. Can I go first?
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, I was able to follow through the story, but then the tune distracted me a bit.
Okay. Okay.
And also, yeah, it brought smile towards the end when I didn't expect that ending.
Yes, correct. Yes. Yes, Hari Krishna.
yeah, the constructor entry and the comparison that shops with cloud computing. That
Correct.
were my takeaways.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yes. Lohita, what about you?
It brings a smile.
Yes, absolutely. It does. So what we learned from this video was very simple, and it's a very simple concept, and that is called simplicity of your narrative. You might be doing the most complex job in the world, but if you cannot narrate that in a simplistic manner, because if you think about it, when you do your sales pitches or whatever, your audience could be a CTO, CIO, any CXO level, or an architect or a business lead or whatever, and not everybody will be coming from a technical background. So can you tell them about your idea or a product in a very simplistic way, even that a kid could understand? If you can do that, if you can present as if you're presenting to your grandma, you definitely know your subject. You definitely know your subject. And I think this particular video is going to probably ring a bell. I'm sure all of us have watched it.
Is a machine.
So maybe if people who do not understand Hindi, there are subtitles as well. But I'm sure you understand and now understand what I mean by the simplicity of a language. That's very important in any. You talk about any story you tell to a kid. You're doing a presentation to a CEO. Everybody loves the simplicity of a narrative with obviously tangible outcomes that govern your crux of your story. What are you trying to get at? Coming to the next one. Okay. Now, as part of a study that was done by Microsoft Canada, the average human attention span is a mere 8 seconds. How long do you think you can hold the audience attention during a presentation? Maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. But what if I told you that all of us have attended this presentation where attention has been held for a long, long time, sometime at the edge of the seat? I'm obviously talking about movies, right? Now, movies is something where it has so many elements to it. It could be a beautiful heroine, it could be a macho hero, the plot, the cinematography, and whatnot, right? But the suspense might not work very well in our corporate presentations. I'm sure Yash cannot stand up in front of a audience in his office and say, "Hey, ladies and gentlemen, in the last slide of the deck today, you are going to know whether to invest in my project or not." You can't say that, right? You might make a fool of yourself, right? So suspense does not work. Then what does? In any story, you'll find that one core element of storytelling is curiosity. Are you are you are you enabling that curiosity? Are you exciting the audience with what you have? And are you peeling the layers of the onion one by one and not delivering the entire project on its own at the start? And for that, what is very important to drive home that curiosity, and that is knowing your audience. Where audience, if you understand the audience like the palm of your hands, I think your job becomes very, very, very easy, right? And I'm sure one person who's very good at it is Steve Jobs. Every single product that he's done, he knows his audience like the back of his hand. However, I'm not going to show you the Steve Jobs video. I'm showing you again one of the finest leadership principles that I've seen in storytelling, and this is about audience analysis. Let me play that. And again, after this, I would like to get your inputs as well.
Business review called Connect Then Lead. There's a Harvard Business Review called Connect Then Lead. It states they did a lot of research on thousands and thousands of leaders and salespeople, and what they found is that the two most important traits of top leaders and salespeople for influence are competency and empathy. But the order matters. I'm going to share a quick little story with you. My husband decided to trade in what we lovingly called his shopping cart of a vehicle. He called the sales guy and made an appointment. And as we're driving down, he looks at me and he says, "Now listen, no matter what he says, no matter what the price is, we're not buying anything today. You got that?" I said, I got it. So we get to the car dealership. Out comes this sort of middle-aged, silver-haired guy. He takes one look at my husband and he says, "Lee Gerstein, it is so amazing to meet you." He said, "I hope you don't mind. I looked you up on LinkedIn. I like to know a little bit about the people I'm going to serve." And he said, "I see that you're the past president for the National Ability Center, and my own son has autism. He said, I just want to thank you for the work that you do. My husband's eyes just lit up, right? They go into Jared's office and they start talking about autism research, about cures. This goes on for 25, 35 minutes. We stand up, we're walking to go out on the car lot. We haven't even seen a truck. My husband looks at me and he says, I think he has what we need here. Here's the thing. Jared had the competency for trucks. Jared knew about all the different models. He knew about the horsepower. He probably knew the future of self-driverless trucks. But he knew something much more important. He knew my husband, Lee. And that's why you may want to write this one down. Trust is built of 5 components, but it's empathy that gets you in the door. It's reliability, competency, integrity, and vulnerability that keep you there. But you have to lead with empathy. Both are equally important. You need to know your product, you need to know your people. But here's the thing, before people decide what they think of your message, they decide what they think of you. Don't ever forget that.
Right. So again, coming back to all of you, what did you guys learn from this video? What is the
For me,
point that I'm trying to? Yeah?
for me, I learned this, that not sure people will remember what you said, but they will surely remember how you make them feel.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you. Yes. And that's very well said, Yash, because as she rightly said, Jared, who was the salesperson, he knew everything about trucks. But one thing that he knew, and that was the most important, he knew my husband, Lee Gernstein, the audience again. Very nice. Anybody else? Abhijit, we've not heard from you for a while.
I agree with you, sir, because knowing the audience exactly tells you what they are looking for and what are their vulnerabilities. And if you are going with empathy and actually targeting their vulnerabilities, it is easier to get their attention.
Brilliant. Absolutely, yes. Brilliant. Anyone else would like to share your thoughts?
It shows us that the pitch does not necessarily require to be related to the product to sell it.
Brilliant. I love that, Yash. Beautiful answer. As it rightly said, you need to know the product, you know to know the people. If you know the people, I'll tell you a very relatable example. Again, taking you back to the golden era when we all used to go to office, right? And let's say we get to know, okay, we have a client visit 3 months down the line. And hey, Pankaj, you've got to do the presentation in front of the client. Now Pankaj is doing all the preparation. The presentations are coming up, the slides are coming up, the content is coming up, all the preparation is done, animations are great, Pankaj is well suited, he goes to the office, the clients are here, and the session starts, everything is going well. And suddenly, the client will ask one question and Pankaj will not have an answer. And this is a very common thing that happens in almost all the meetings. Do you guys agree to this? That audience will have one question that you will not have an answer to. Yes or no?
Yes, sometimes yes.
Yeah.
I agree to it.
That is because we get so obsessed with our own preparation, we get so obsessed with the pursuit of showing our best side that we completely forget what the audience wants to hear on. Have we taken that extra steps to go and connect to the audience and get to know from the person, why are you traveling here? What is the objective? What is the problem that you're struggling with? We don't do that. And suddenly a curveball question will come and you are left absolutely dumbfounded. Right? So it's very, very important to know your audience. Okay. Finally, I'm coming towards the close of this session, and then I will do a summary of what a brilliant story should be about, and that is applicable in a business world. Now, this is a story about a person called Stan Lee. Anybody knows Stan Lee? So he's the creator of Spider-Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Marvel Comics. Yeah, he belongs to Marvel Comics.
Marvel, absolutely, yes, right? So often people say that it is difficult to be telling a story when my facts are loaded with data. Well, I would like to tell that every context where there is so much data, a beautiful story is behind it. Right? So this person is telling you about a very important thing. We all might have great ideas, brilliant ideas during the course of a career and life, but I'm sure we all have been through this, where it would be our closed ones, especially our relatives, who will bring us down on that idea. People will say, hey, come on, that's a stupid idea, that won't work. Or simply, oh, come on, foolish idea, not going to work. Let me show you what this person wants to tell all of you, and then we'll again take thoughts.
I was told to say an anecdote. Anecdotes are easy. So I thought to myself, what kind of anecdote can I tell these people who really have more important things to do? And I figured I'm going to tell you how Spider-Man came into being. It's a true story, although sometimes it's hard even for me to believe it. We had already done the Fantastic Four and I think maybe the X-Men, I can't remember the order, but my publisher came to me and he said, Stan, I want you to come up with another superhero. I thought, what can I come up with now? And the most important thing in a superhero at first is the superpower. Once you get that, everything else comes along. So I thought, what power will I give a new guy? And I saw a fly crawling on the wall. And I said, hey, if I could get a superhero that could stick to walls and crawl on them, man, that would be cool. So I thought that was good. Now I needed a name. So I said, well, let's see, Fly Man, Mosquito Man. I got down to Spider-Man. Spider-Man. It just sounded dramatic. So, okay, I had my hero, I had his power, his name, and then I figured just for fun, I'm gonna give him personal problems. Then I thought I'd make him a teenager, because there were no teenage superheroes that I knew of at the time. So armed with all that wonderful material, those great ideas, I ran into my publisher's office and I told him, this was my reaction, the reaction he gave me. Stan, that is the worst idea I have ever heard. First of all, people hate spiders, so you can't call a hero Spider-Man. You want him to be a teenager? Teenagers can only be sidekicks. And you want him to have personal problems? Stan, don't you know what a superhero is? They don't have personal problems. So we were about to kill the magazine. It wasn't selling well, and we were sending the last issue to press. When you do the last issue of a magazine, nobody cares what you put in it because the book is dying. Just to get it out of my system, I put Spider-Man in Amazing Fantasy, featured him on the cover. A month later, all the sales figures came in. My publisher came racing into my office. Stan, you remember that character we both loved so much, Spider-Man? He said, let's do him as a series. Now, why am I telling you this? If you have an idea that you genuinely think is good, don't let some idiot talk you out of it. If there is something that you feel is good, something you want to do, something that means something to you, try to do it. Because I think you can only do your best work if you're doing what you want to do, and if you're doing it the way you think it should be done, and if you can take pride in it after you've done it, no matter what it is. So don't let idiots talk you out of something that you think is good. Just do your thing, do it as well as you, that's the important thing. Don't shirk. Whatever you do, give it your best shot. You'll be glad you did. Excelsior!
All right, so that's exactly what I want probably to end with, where we might have the best of the ideas, and it would be the same people who might have shooed you away from pursuing that idea even further, But once that idea becomes a reality, those would be the same people who'd come running to you, appreciating the novelty of your idea. So it's important that if you believe that your idea is good enough, it's okay to pursue it, and you feel good about it. Let no idiot talk you out of it. And that's what I want to end with. Do you believe in your idea? So if I have to do a quick recap, so Newton's story, it's all about every story should have a context. Parisian love, it was about brevity where timing matters. Then your story should be simplicity in language. You have to generate creativity and curiosity in the audience. Every story, you should touch upon the challenges, the conflict, and the solution. There has to be a time marker. Characters have to be there. You've got to exhibit confidence and courage. And finally, you will never be able to tell a great story if you yourself do not believe in your idea and your product. And the passion with which you narrate your story will tell the audience that you are really pursuing your idea and you believe in it, and that's when they would connect to you and the business would flow. Right? With that, I would like to probably end this session with one story that I had heard somewhere. And while I do that, I'm just going to bring up a picture and I'll present that when the time is right. Okay, give me one moment. All right. So, so not long ago in a world not too far from our own, there was a little boy called Alan, and Alan loved to play at the beach because it meant rolling on the sand with his brother, choosing the waves, writing on the sand, waiting for the waters to wash them away. One day at dusk, the brothers sat with their father listening to the waves, washing their toes and watching the sun set and the birds fly towards the horizon. Where are they going? Asked 3-year-old Alan. Oh, the father raised his hand and he said, how they're flying to the former skies away from the harsh winter. Well, no one knew it more than Abdullah, the father. After all, he was looking for safer skies that didn't spew fire. He was looking for a city safe and secure away from the violence of the home in Damascus. He was looking for a home that was not rattled by gunshots and bombs asleep, was not interrupted, the mother's lullaby. He was looking for a childhood for his children full of laughter and not fear. It's going to be an adventure, boys, the father promised. They're going to be whales and fishes, and they're going to be dolphins and sharks, and they're going to be turtles and jellyfish. Just make sure of one thing, don't look down in the water or touch, or they would want all to share the ride with you. The older one said, can we take a fish for a bowl, Daddy? Only if we have room, said Abdullah. But it was nothing like a ship. It was a small rubber inflatable boat. It had room for about 8 people, but another 8 moved in and they all huddled together to make room. It was a perilous journey, one that very few made through, and there was no turning back. So when one early September morning the family huddled together for one last time, praying to the sea to take them to the safe shores, but the waters were friendly. They wanted to play with the boys like they always did. So they rose and they fell, turning the boat all over into the deep cold waters of the Mediterranean Sea. Just like countless other refugees lost in sea, Alan would still have been just another statistic had we not watched this horrific picture. Have you seen this picture earlier?
Yes.
Yes.
This is Alan. Now, why did I tell you all the story, by the way? I told you the story because when I heard it for the first time, I had really tears in my eyes. I was moved by the story. He still had his shoes on, and he was finally resting to hear his mother lullabies, maybe forever. But I was also listening to a few more storytellers in that session, right? And what happened was, one of them felt that it was a beautiful rendition and it is a story that ought to be told to children who are growing up in conflict regions themselves, while the other storyteller felt it was very high on propaganda, listening to stories of conflict and suffering. He believed had a deep impact on the listener's sense of victimhood and therefore the need of sacrifice and martyrdom. So the question that I want to ask all of you, and I want you all to leave with, is: do these stories reinforce the perception that people have grown up with, or do they take them away from the perceptions? And it is in these situations that a storyteller can really use a story as a currency to peddle truth or fantasy, to peddle history or painful history or a beautiful future. Stories can move mountains or the deepest of the oceans if you believe in them, because stories can create storms in the calmest of seas. Stories can be used as a currency to influence, to inspire, to even instruct. Stories can either put a generation to sleep or it can arouse them to action, no matter what you are today or who you will be from a time, maybe to a student, to a teacher, a professor, an entrepreneur, a business leader, whatsoever. So what do you do with the story that you have is what's going to make the difference. We all are stories. We are all living stories. We all have stories. But what we're going to do with the story is what is going to matter a lot. What are you going to ask for return? And very simply, what do you choose to arouse in the hearts of millions who would listen to a story? One last one before I end the session today. We all have data, and all data people say it's truth. So one fine day, and listen to this very carefully, okay? So one fine day, Truth was walking down the road and he saw a village ahead of him. And he thought, I'll repeat again, Truth was walking down the road and he saw a village ahead of him. And he thought, surely this would be a friendly place. Surely Truth will be welcomed in a village such as this. So he walked into the village and he noticed people looking at him with these sort of small eyes, as the ones that look a bit suspicious as to who is that and what is that. And for some reason, he found himself at the other end of the village very quickly. He just did not know what had happened. So he kept walking and walking until he got to the next village, and he thought to himself, surely Truth would be welcomed in a village like this. But no, it was even worse, where people greeted Truth with angry eyes and shaking the fist, and suddenly, again, the Truth was the other end of the village. Well, he did not give up. He walked and walked all night, and he thought to himself, surely there will be people who will be wanting to welcome the Truth in the light of a new day. But again, he was sorely mistaken. And this time, it was even worse. People shook fists, they shouted angry words, they abused him, they took out all the rubbish and threw it all over the Truth. The Truth was covered with rubbish top to bottom. So he ran out of the village crying to himself, and he just stayed there in the village trying to clean himself in the forest. It was late afternoon when he began to hear the sound of merriment and laughter and joy. So he crept to the edge of the forest just to look out as to what's going on. And what he saw was that people were coming out of the houses with little tables. They had put tablecloths, they had food, they had wine, and there was about to be a fire. So obviously, there was some celebration about to begin. And that was when he saw a story enter the village. And people welcomed the story with smiles and appreciation and applause. Watching that, it made Truth cry even harder. So the story, being the kind one she was, she comes into the forest to find out what's going on, to find out the truth of the matter. And Truth complained loud and long to the story how people had ill-treated him, how sorry and abject his life was. Well, Story looked at him with compassionate eyes. She looked him up and down, and she says, well, I can see what has happened. I mean, who wants to see a naked Truth? And so she gave him some of her colorful robes and wrapped him in the robes, and arm in arm, Story and Truth went back into that same old village. And since people loved the story, this time, seeing the truth along with the story, they welcomed the truth as well because they loved the story. And that's the way it always has been. That's the way it is. And that is the way it will always be. You might have the best of the slides, you might have the best of the data, you might have the best of the animations, you might have the best of the presentations, which is all truth. But if you do not have a story, you might have everything, but not the smiles and the applause and the laughter. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to me. My name is Pankaj Mishra and I'm a business storyteller. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pankaj. It was a really great session.
Thank you, Yash.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Totally a pleasure. Over to you,
Mind
Naveen.
blowing.
Thank you, sir.
Simply mind blowing, I would say. I think this is one of the best ever storytelling sessions that I've attended. Thank you so much, Pankaj.
Totally a
Thank you
pleasure,
so much.
Naveen.
Yeah, I'm sure our interns might have got the nuances of how to build that curiosity and increase the reach, and also definitely it is going to take TGV a long way. Thank you
Yep.
so much again, and yeah, look forward to many more. So, do you guys have any questions?
Yes, we can open it for questions as well.
Do you guys have
Okay.
any questions we can stay on, or else no questions?
For me, Pankaj, how can we connect with you?
Okay. Oh, yes. Brilliant, brilliant question. I'm going to just share my LinkedIn profile with you right now.
Sure.
Yeah. And by the
Give me
way,
a moment.
Yash,
Yes, Naveen.
Pankaj is already part of TED Circles group. Okay. And yeah,
Oh, okay.
it is always good to connect on LinkedIn. Yeah, so that
Yes.
you can have that personal connection and all, because in the group conversation will not be able to engage. So yeah, I would encourage you to send a connection invite and be in touch with Pankaj.
Yes.
Yeah, I've just
Yes.
shared my LinkedIn profile on the chat.
Okay. Wonderful. So hey, all the interns, can we get into the Google Meet and continue our weekly call? Just I'll probably wind it up in 10 or 15 minutes itself, so that